What is Mrs. Kraus's pet peeve?
I don't know if it's necessarily something that's a pet peeve, but Mrs. Kraus does not like to hug, and I like to hug, so sometimes I just hug her because we're friends. Also, I think that she really doesn't like when people spell her name wrong, because actually when they spell it right with S-A-R-A-H, she spells it wrong.
How do you think Mr. and Mrs. Kraus met?
I think Mr. and Mrs. Kraus met in college when Mr. Kraus went pheasant hunting, and the pheasant got loose in the dorm room and the dorms, and he chased it down through the halls, and with Mrs. Kraus being the lieutenant person they had to go to for a complaint, they all went to her for what he was doing, and he got yelled at for it, and that's how they met.
Where do you think Mrs. Kraus grew up?
Wisconsin, Wisconsin, Wisconsin. Because I get Wisconsin cheese from her parents when they get to come down. So she's from Wisconsin.
That she makes math more simple and easier to do, and that she's funny.
How old do you think Mrs. Kraus is?
Mrs. Kraus, she's getting up there. She's at least 25, 26.
Favorite part about Mrs. Kraus?
My favorite part about Mrs. Kraus is that she is creative and always wants the kids to do their best. She goes above and beyond and encourages them not only in her classroom but also in the sports that she coaches and helps with.
How did you meet Miss Kraus?
I met Mrs. Kraus when I was actually in high school. When I ran for cross country in O'Neill, I knew Mrs. Kraus because she was the coach for West Holt as well. I also met her through 4-H and when her daughter Bailey did horse shows with me growing up. And so it's been really cool just getting to now be on a different side and getting to know Mrs. Kraus in another way by, rather than knowing her as a coach from another town, getting to know her as a colleague and a friend now.
This moment with Mrs. Kraus, probably when she asked me to compete in a 4x1 relay for the West Holt Huskies. I was a little hesitant at first, but then she convinced me to join the team and compete with the students. And it was a lot of fun, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
How do you think Mr. and Mrs. Kraus met?
They went to the same school, so they went to Wayne State College, and Mrs. Kraus was the RN, or like the one that was in charge of all the floors and stuff. And Mr. Kraus and his buddies would go, and they'd go like pheasant hunting or something, and they'd drag the bloody like pheasants through the hallways and get so many complaints. So Mrs. Kraus always had to go and yell at them and stuff, and that's how they met.
What do you appreciate about Mrs. Kraus?
I like how easily she makes learning and how she makes it simple and also fun at the same time.
I think Mr. and Mrs. Kraus probably met somewhere at Wayne State, maybe in a classroom, but I'm quite sure that their first date ended up on a dirt road, hunting pheasants with a couple dogs in the back and that sort of thing. After that, I'm not sure, but I would guess that that was one of the first dates they had.
Wisconsin or Minnesota, but I'm pretty sure Wisconsin.
What do you appreciate about Mrs. Kraus?
I appreciate the fact that Mrs. Kraus takes kids with math problems and gives them opportunity to do it hands-on, because I think that helps a lot of kids grasp the concepts more easily.
Kraus grew up at?
She grew up in Wisconsin.
How old do you think Miss Kraus is?
I'd have to say Mrs. Kraus is about 26.
What's your favorite and funniest memory with Mrs. Kraus?
So she was telling me a story one day about how she mistakenly took Mountain Dew for pee, that her son apparently peed in a cup.
I think Mrs. Kraus's room smells like lemon box cookies.
Where do you think Miss Kraus grew up?
I believe she grew up in Wisconsin.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure Mr. and Mrs. Kraus met when they're at college, and probably when they're like running together, and then they ran together like probably like 5 miles or something, and then they fell in love, and now they're here.
I hate about Mrs. Kraus. I appreciate that she always is like willing to help me with math because I'm really bad at math, and she's always like, if I ask her a question,
if I ask her a question, she doesn't make me sound dumb. Like, she actually helps me. So that's probably my favorite thing about her.
Grew up at.
Wisconsin.
What do you appreciate about Mrs. Kraus?
She makes learning fun and she's just a whole lot